Happy Friday. Welcome to our Vincent Van Gogh project. I see some familiar faces from last month. Welcome. I see some new faces. Thanks for joining. Remember, we'll be doing this once a month until the summertime, and then in the summer, hopefully once a week. So this week we are going to talk about Vincent Van Gogh. As I had mentioned last month, I'm an art teacher. I teach high school kids. And I enjoy doing this because I work with some of the younger grade school kids, and we do a little bit of art history. I'm going to introduce you to one of Vincent Van Gogh's work. Oh, by the way, does anybody remember who we did last month? Yeah. What? Who? Go ahead, tell me. Yell it out.
Henry Matisse?
Yes. You knew it too, Ben? Did you remember it, Ben?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, I taught you something. My job's done here. Henry Matisse, yep. And remember, I told you in Belmar, right up the street, there used to be a restaurant called Matisse. So we're going to learn about another artist. His name is Vincent Van Gogh. Has anybody heard of him before? Does anybody know anything about him? What do you know? Anything? No. It's okay. I'm going to tell you all about him if you've never heard of him. All right, how about I show you one of his pictures? Just as a little side note, if you like Vincent Van Gogh, they're doing this really cool show about his work, about his artwork in New York City, which isn't very far from here. I bought tickets for it, and all summer long, you can go into this room where they are taking his paintings and projecting them all over the wall. I'm not getting any commission on this. I'm just saying it seems really cool. All right, guys, so let me show you a Vincent Van Gogh picture, and maybe it'll look familiar to you. Maybe you'll say, oh, I saw that work before. Can you guys see my screen? Shake your head, yes? Thumbs up, something? Okay. So on my screen, I have two pictures, right? The Starry Night. Does that look familiar? Anybody see it before? Maybe, yeah, like it's pretty commercial. They use it for, you might see it on TV for different purposes, advertisements, things like that. So the artist named Vincent Van Gogh did this painting a long time ago, over 150 years ago. He, is no longer around, but his paintings continue to be one of the most famous paintings that you will find in museums. He worked mostly with paint. So hopefully you picked up your packet over the week, or you have some paints. Notice I have my smock today. So if anybody's wearing their favorite shirt, they might want to put on a smock or an old shirt before we start painting. So he mainly dealt with paint. So let's take a look at that top picture. All done in paint. So I'm telling you that that it's paint. It's not, it might look like crayons or pastels or something else, but it was all done in paint. What do you think of, like, the first time you look at that picture? What's the first word that comes to your mind? Just yell it out. No right or wrong. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Go ahead, just yell it out. I say swirls.
What do you think?
I think of just the moon.
Moon. The moon. Yep. Yeah, well, if you're going to talk, unmute yourself. But go ahead and you could just yell it out, unmute yourself, and tell me, like, no right or wrong. What's the first word that comes to mind?
Houses. I think houses in the painting.
Houses. Yep. It's kind of like an overhead view. You see some of the tops of buildings.
Oh. I'm wondering you.
So let's talk about the way he painted. If you look in the painting itself, it's almost little lines, little dashes. The whole picture, he liked to use a brushstroke and make little dashes and kind of blend them together. All his work was about lines. So I said, I see curved lines. What other kind of lines do you see? Go ahead and just unmute yourself and yell it out. What other kind of lines do you see?
Wiggly lines.
Wiggly lines? I mean, look in the mountains. You see kind of curved lines. I see straight lines. Horizontal lines are lines that go across. Vertical lines are lines that go up and down. Circular lines. Look at the line. Somebody said the first thing they see is the moon. These other little areas are stars. So those little dashes, those little lines make the moon and the sun what? What does it make it look like? They're shining, or they're radiating light. So it's just all that line is giving a sense of movement. So all his pictures, he liked to incorporate some kind of line. And that's going to kind of where we come into play with our fork. You may have thought, my bag of goodies has a fork in it. Is that supposed to be there? Yes. So you look at the bottom one, that's just a student example. Yours might look very different from that. But we're going to kind of start, we're going to work in stages here. We're going to think about the background, which is the sky, the middle ground, which is the stars and the moon, and then the foreground, if you want to add the top of a house, or this is really more like a bush or a big tree in the foreground. That means it's in the beginning of the picture, the front of the picture. And then if you see in the student examples, there's lines, okay? So instead of using brush strokes for our lines, because that might take us a little bit of practice, we're going to use the fork to actually give the look of Van Gogh's swirly lines, okay? So any questions about Vincent Van Gogh and the Starry Night before we get started? Okay, so I'd just like to start every lesson off with a little informational session so you can know really what you're doing. So if you picked up a brown bag, these are the items that you should have. A piece of cardstock. Let me stop sharing my screen so I could see you guys bigger. Pause share, stop share. Okay, there you go. Now I can see everyone. So one big piece of paper, it should be a little on the thicker side. 3 paints, you have a blue, a purple, and a yellow, a fork. I gave you cotton balls to apply the paint. If you have paintbrushes, go ahead and grab them. You could use that instead of the cotton balls, but I wanted to make sure I did have some cotton balls hanging around. So if you don't have access to a paintbrush, use cotton balls to apply the paint when we get to that step. If you have a couple paintbrushes, great, grab them. Some things that you'll need from your kitchen, a cup with water, okay? So if you want to run and get that, or if you have somebody around you that can get you a cup of water, and a paper towel or two. So whenever we put our brush, if you're using the cotton balls, you probably don't need the water. But if you want to kind of dry out your brush or your cotton ball, you're going to dab it onto the paper towel. We're going to paint to the edges of our paper. So I'm putting down a piece of newspaper. So if your parent is nearby and they want to keep the surface of whatever you're working on clean, you might want to stick something underneath, like a piece of newspaper, so that you don't get it all over. Okay. There also should be a small piece of colored paper that we're going to use for that tree in the foreground, but we're going to do that last. Okay. Everybody do you need a second to go get your supplies? We need a pencil. Start with a pencil. Everyone have their pencil and paper? Okay, let's get started. We don't want to jump into the painting until we have a preliminary, a starting point. So when we looked at Van Gogh's, we saw the moon or the sun. You can do a full moon. You can do a crescent moon. Does everyone know what a crescent moon is? Is that kind of like sliver of a moon? You have the entire paper. You're the artist. Where would you like your moon to be? Do you like it a little bit off to the center? Do you want it in the center? Do you want it high? Do you want it a little bit low? Start with your moon. You as the artist have to decide where the moon's going to be and what shape you want your moon to be. And don't worry, your drawing doesn't have to be perfect. It's all going to be covered with paint. Okay. So if you see mine, I drew a crescent moon a little bit over to the right side. And when we go to paint, we talked about kind of having those radiating lines. We're going to do that when we blend our paint together. Now we want to add the stars. How many stars do you want? 3, 5? It's up to you. Now you can draw an actual star, or you can just draw a little circle where you want the star to be, because when we looked, even though that painting was called The Starry Night, no one mentioned that there was technically no stars like we know it, an actual star shape. But when we look at a star that's in the sky from the ground, they don't look like stars either, what we perceive a star to be, right? They really just look like a glowing dot. So go ahead here, and I would say 3 or 5 or even a couple more, however many stars you want in your sky. And they could be just little circles. Okay, so I just made a bunch of little circles. So far, all we have is our moon and our little circles for stars. Now, I use the word foreground, that little tree in the front, or if you want to do a house. We are going to use our little piece of construction paper. And when the paint's wet, we're going to actually glue that on, or like the paint is going to let it stick to the paper. So you might want to just decide in this little corner here, that's where I'm going to put my shape. I'm going to come a little closer so I can show you guys. Okay, so this is all I have, and I'm almost ready to start painting. I have my moon, I have my little circles for stars, and then this is going to be the piece of construction paper. So I'm just kind of like marking out an area so I know later on as the last step, that's where the foreground will be. Any questions so far? All right, let's get started. Roll up those sleeves. We always start with the lighter color first. Anybody know why? Why do you think lighter to darker? Any guesses out there?
That you can blend them.
Helps the blend for sure. I mean, what if you put the blue first and then you wanted to put the yellow on it? You know what color you get? Anybody know what color you get? Green. So we want to start where we can just get pure yellow. We just want yellow. So either grab your cotton ball and dab it in, or use a paintbrush. Color in your moon and your stars. Just fill in your moon and your stars. Now, because we're using the yellow first, that's your lightest color. Everything can be overlaid. We can paint over it. How we do it. This one's going to be hard for you to hold up and let me see because I don't want the paint to drip. Good, 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 good. Looks good. So yeah, it doesn't look like much yet, but remember that's our first layer. That's our first layer. Good. I see a few of you with your paintbrushes. Very good. When you're all done with the yellow, just clean off that paintbrush if you're going to use it for your other colors. You might want to go back in and at the end and add a little bit more yellow when you blend them. But right now, we just want to fill in our areas with the moon and the stars, okay? That's all. So we're just giving everybody a few minutes to finish up. Let it dry a little bit. Then we're going to move on to the purple and blue. So if you haven't yet, you can open up the lids of the purple and blue. Okay, open up your purple and blue. And get that fork nearby too. So we are going to use the fork mostly with the purple and blue. If you remember the Starry Night, he mixed a lot of colors to create those swirls. So you don't want to make just a blue sky, and I wouldn't make just a purple sky. I would mix them. You want to combine them. Work a little section at a time. So if you guys can just hold on and let me demo it for you. So I'm going to just show you. I'm going to take a little bit of the purple, little area at a time. So you don't want to do the whole sky. Work in sections. Okay, I'm going to take a little purple, a little blue, kind of mix it together. While it's still wet, it's important. I'm going to take my fork and I'm going to drag it through the paint. So let me try. So I'm dragging it through the wet paint. But notice how I just did one section. I don't want to do the whole area because it's going to dry. You need it to be wet. And do you see, I'm going to hold it real close. You can see that the fork is creating those Van Gogh type lines in the sky, like we saw in his Starry Night. Okay, so let's work on a little section at a time. Let me know how it's going. So don't be afraid to combine both the blue and the purple. That's going to give you a cool effect. And then after a little section, grab that fork. And again, no right or wrong, just swirl. Make those lines.
Okay. What's your last name?
Okay, so see mine's starting to come along here. Little section at a time. No such thing as messing up. Good, Callie, did you try the fork yet? Is it making lines? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. It's hard for me to see on the screen.
So,
Is anybody having a hard time with the lines? Did everyone try it? That's the key to this project, is to get the lines in with the fork so it looks like a Van Gogh.
and first name? I have Maureen, Carol, Kirsten, Rosie, and Chance. Carol? Okay. Okay, so I have matter and wild. Really both? Okay, you've all set. Um,
So try a variety of lines with your fork. Maybe some curved, maybe some straight, maybe some dashes, maybe a lift it, lift it, lift it, lift it, lift it.
We are here from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Now, when you get close to the stars, kind of try to blend a little bit, either with your fork or with your brush, so that the yellow doesn't disappear. You want to make sure some of that yellow shows through. You don't want to hide the yellow altogether. Everybody looks pretty busy. I can't wait to see the final product. The amount of swirls you do is up to you. You can always layer a little bit more paint if you feel like you want to add more swirls, more lines. Any questions at home? Everyone seems pretty busy. Can't wait to see the finished product. So the more paint you add on it, you might see your paper might curl a little bit. That's okay. When it dries, it'll flatten. Try to bring the paint all the way to the edges. That's why I mentioned maybe putting something underneath. If you're using the same paintbrush, make sure you wash it out. Dab it on your paper towel. Callie, try holding the fork the other way. You might, if you want the lines to be more noticeable, yeah, like this. Kind of drag it in the paper like this. Is it working the other way? Are you getting lines? Because this one will put more pressure on the fork itself. Is that working better? Okay. How about the rest of you guys getting lines with the fork? Okay. So mine is still pretty wet, but I filled the entire page. I don't want you guys to hold yours up right now because I don't want it to slip and fall. But this is pretty much where you want to get to before we add our final step, which is the foreground. So take another 5 minutes or so and finish filling up your area. Once I was done with all of it, I did go back and add a little more yellow. So if you feel like your stars or your moon got a little bit lost with your purple and blue paint, you can go back in and add a little bit of yellow where your star and moon are, and just kind of freshen them up, add a little bit of an outline, that little glow that we see in Vincent Van Gogh's. If you're using your paintbrushes and your cup of water gets really dark, you might need to switch that out. So if you have to go dump your water out in the sink and refill it, feel free. If you have dirty water, it's not really going to help your brush as much. How we doing? How much of the paper do you guys have done? Almost finished? Don't forget to use that fork while the paint's wet or you won't get those lines. Looks good. How's it going, Gloria? Good, okay. All right. Don't want to interrupt the artist at work. So once you're done with your sky, with your blue and purple, see if you want to go back in and add any more yellow. All right, in about 3 more minutes, I'm going to talk about that next step that we're going to do for those of you that are ready for the next step. So finish up that sky. And then we're going to be using that square of colored paper that you have. I think some of you have black and some of you have brown. You have a little piece of construction paper you could use. If you don't have construction paper, some of you, if you didn't pick up a goodie bag, if you have a different colored paint, maybe a black paint you can use. But if you have a piece of a dark colored piece of construction paper, that's what we're going to use, either black or brown. I included one of these in each of the supply bags. Eli, how does yours look? Can you hold it up or is it too wet? Good, I see the lines. Very good. So when it comes to making that little tree in the foreground, I keep using that word foreground, that might be a new word for you. It just means in the front of the picture. So foreground starts with an F, front starts with an F. Maybe you'll learn something new today, foreground, front of the picture. You can use a pair of scissors, but you don't have to, okay? If you remember in Van Gogh's Starry Night, it kind of had a rough feeling to it. So we're gonna create something that looks like that tree that was in the foreground. And I made this just by tearing it. If you don't really trust yourself to tear it, then you could use a scissor. But what I did was just kind of take the edges. Because I like how it gives that rough edge to the paper. And it really doesn't, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. There's nothing perfect about it. This is just that random shape that you're going to make for the foreground of your Starry Night. So here's one I just made with the brown. Here's one I made with the black before class. All I did was tear the edge of it. If you don't like that, use scissors. You could use scissors. You could draw it out if you want to be a little more precise and you prefer to draw out a little tree for the foreground. you can do that as well. You know, I keep cutting off half my face when I come close to the screen, but I gotta show you guys stuff. So once you have the shape that you like, you know, if you don't like this shape, rip a little bit more out. You know, there's any kind of shape will work for this, whatever will position itself on the bottom of your picture. So take a look at your picture. Where do you want that foreground tree to go? I think I'm going to put mine kind of over to the side like it was in the original Van Gogh. My paint is already dry here, okay? I want to re-wet this with paint because I'm just going to use the paint as a glue. As it dries, it'll let this stick to it. So I'm just going to get a little bit more paint. I'm going to wet that area. And then I'm going to stick my paper down in there. Maybe add a few more swirls with my fork. So it will stick, it will adhere right to the wet paint there. I think that looks a little bit like Van Gogh, right? Does this look a little bit like Van Gogh's Starry Night? Yeah. And once your foreground is done, there's one final thing. Every artist needs to sign their work. So because there's a lot going on in this picture, I think I would sign it in the area where you just put the foreground tree. Maybe use the yellow because it's lighter and sign your name right on that black or brown area. So we talked about it last month. When you become famous as an artist, you can sign your name however you want. Maybe you want to be known as your first name. Maybe you want to be known as your last name. Vincent Van Gogh actually signed most of his work just Van Gogh or V Van Gogh. I like to sign, when I do my own artwork, I like to do my initials, DML. So whatever you want to be known as when you are a famous artist, go ahead and sign your picture as your famous name. There's my initials right there, right in that foreground area in the bottom corner there, DML. I added it. Voila. My version of Vincent Van Gogh using a fork. Before you go, if you're done, I'd love to see them if you could hold them up. Good. Did you get your name on there, Eli? Is it in the corner?
It's a bit small in the top corner.
Oh, you did it on the top? Okay. Did you do it in paint?
I did it in pencil, where there's a little bit of white.
Okay, you had a little area there. That works as long as you sign it. There were some famous artists that did like to sign their names in interesting spots, like the top corners. Traditionally, you sign it in the bottom right corner, but hey, when you're talented and famous artist, you could do whatever the heck you want, right? Oh, very good, Gloria. I love it. Where's your, did you sign yours? Or is it too wet? You got it? Okay. Very good.
Mine isn't drying.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so everyone's is gonna take a while to dry. You know, when we leave in a couple minutes, I would just let your, oh, I see yours, Ben, you're holding yours up. It's a little dark because you have a light in the background, but I can kind of make it out. Uh-oh.
No,
The black paper isn't sticking to the picture.
Okay, did you put some wet paint? You have to put
Yes.
some new wet paint down.
Yeah, I did. It's not working.
Put a little bit thicker wet paint. Just put a little bit more.
But I already put it on.
Okay, well, if it's not sticking, can you peel it off slightly and then stick a little bit of more wet paint?
Yeah.
Or if that doesn't work, Callie, you can let the whole picture dry and then put a little dab of glue on there and put it on. Okay?
Okay.
But really, like, you have to just put a decent amount, and then as it dries, it will stick. So what I was gonna say is, when we leave in a few minutes, you really wanna leave your picture to sit for like an hour, and then it will be completely dry, and you could frame it, hang it on your fridge, do whatever you want with it. But it should sit there for a little while so that it doesn't fall, get ruined, or anything happen to the Van Gogh masterpiece that you did today. Anybody else want to share their work? Callie, can we see your final piece?
Sure, but I'm just starting to put some paint on where I want mine to be.
Okay. Very good, very good. I like how you blended the purple and the blue, and you got almost like a pinkish color going on there too.
Mhm.
Very nice, very nice. Who is that, Eli?
That's Grandpa.
Was he doing this project with you?
No, I just got
All right. How about I saw Ben V's picture, Ben W. Can I see your picture? You're done? I see it on the table there. It looks great, Gloria. Very nice. All right, so let me tell you about next month's. Let me just check the date. It is May 7th. May 7th, we will be doing Claude Monet. Okay, another painter. We'll be incorporating some tissue paper. He was famous for doing water lily paintings. He did tons and tons of them in his life. So we're going to talk about Claude Monet and create our own water lily scene. So starting next week, if you want to come pick up a goodie bag for that, a supply bag for that, you can. And on May 7th at 4 o'clock, we'll be meeting again virtually to do our Monet art project. Okay. Any questions today about Vincent Van Gogh? Who do you like better, Matisse's work or Van Gogh's work so far? Those of you who came to both.
Van Gogh.
Why, Callie? Because you like the painting part of it, or you like the final product better?
I like the final product.
Great.
Because it looks super neat with the swirls of the fork.
And how easy is that? So, like, I hope that you have that fork. If you want to try another painting, does everybody have a little extra paint left over?
Yeah.
Save the paint, try something else. You know, it doesn't have to be like the Starry Night. You could just do something else with the swirls and the fork. Art is about playing around and experimenting. So I hope you have some fun with the leftover supplies. Okay. All right, if there's no other questions, I'm going to let you guys go and enjoy your Friday night. Thanks for coming, everyone. Bye.